ShadowDirector, Dissecting the DSM, Episode 6, The Mystery of Mania. There was another patient on the unit. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah had been there for 3 weeks when he arrived, and she would still be there when he left. Sarah had real bipolar disorder, F31.0, Bipolar I Disorder, documented across multiple hospitalizations, confirmed by multiple providers, supported by years of medical records. Not F31.9, the unspecified catch-all. F31.0, the real thing. Welcome to the final episode of ShadowDirector, Dissecting the DSM. In our previous episodes, we explored how the DSM fragments experience into codes, how F31.9 became a profit center, how emergency funding amplified fraud, and what it actually feels like to be coded and sedated. Today, we're going deeper into mania itself, into what happens when the diagnosis is accurate but the treatment is absent, and into the mystery of a system that codes but doesn't heal. Let's start with Sarah. Sarah was 34. She'd been cycling between mania and depression for 12 years. When she was manic, she didn't sleep for days. Her thoughts raced so fast she couldn't catch them. She made impulsive decisions, spending money she didn't have, starting projects she couldn't finish, believing she had special powers, that she could see the future, that she was chosen for something greater. When she was depressed, she couldn't get out of bed. The world lost all color, all meaning. She thought about death constantly, not as a threat, but as a relief. Sarah's mania was different from his. His was compensatory, a surge of agency after terror, a protest against panic. Sarah's was primary, a mood disorder, chemical, neurological, real. The DSM had a code for it, F31.0. The system had a category. The billing had a classification. But here's what the system didn't have: actual help. Sarah had been on the unit for 3 weeks. She'd been stabilized, medicated, monitored, documented. But stabilized isn't the same as treated. Stabilized means the symptoms are controlled, the crisis is managed, the patient is safe. Treated means the underlying condition is addressed, the patient has tools, the patient has support, the patient has a path forward. Sarah was stabilized. She wasn't treated. The unit had group therapy twice a week. Sarah went. She sat in the circle, listened to others share, sometimes shared herself. But group therapy on a psychiatric unit isn't treatment, it's containment. It's a way to pass time, to create structure, to give the appearance of care. Real treatment would require individual therapy, medication management, support groups, case management, housing assistance, employment support, family education. The unit provided none of that. Sarah's psychiatrist visited once a week, maybe twice if there was a crisis. The visits lasted 10-15 minutes. Medication review, symptom check, discharge planning. But discharge planning on a psychiatric unit isn't planning, it's paperwork. It's finding a place to send the patient, a provider to follow up, a prescription to fill. It's not building a life, creating stability, addressing the conditions that led to hospitalization. Sarah would be discharged with a prescription, a follow-up appointment, a list of resources. But the resources were often unavailable. Wait lists, months long, providers not accepting new patients, programs full. The follow-up appointment might be weeks away. The prescription might be expensive, might have side effects, might not work. And when Sarah cycled again, when the mania returned, when the depression deepened, she would be back. Same unit, same script, same cycle. This is the deeper mystery. It's not just about fraud, though fraud exists. It's not just about misdiagnosis, though misdiagnosis is common. It's about a system that codes but doesn't treat, that stabilizes but doesn't heal, that documents but doesn't understand. Sarah had the right diagnosis. She had the right code. She had the right medications, but she didn't have help. Let's explore mania itself. What does it actually feel like? The DSM describes it: elevated mood, increased energy, decreased need for sleep, racing thoughts, grandiosity, impulsivity. But the DSM doesn't capture the experience. It doesn't capture what it feels like when your thoughts move so fast you can't catch them, when every idea seems brilliant, when every possibility seems real, when the world itself seems to accelerate, to brighten, to expand. Mania isn't just happiness, it's intensity. It's the feeling that you're connected to something larger, that you understand things others don't, that you have access to truths hidden from ordinary perception. It's the conviction that you can do anything, that limitations don't apply to you, that the rules are for other people. It's exhilarating, intoxicating, and it's also dangerous. The Sarah described it like this: it's like being plugged into the universe. Everything makes sense. Everything connects. I can see patterns other people miss. I can understand things that are beyond normal comprehension. I feel powerful, chosen, special, and then it crashes. The connection breaks. The patterns disappear. The power fades, and I'm left with nothing. Just the wreckage of what I did while I was manic. The relationships I damaged, the money I spent, the opportunities I lost. The DSM has codes for this: F31.0 for full mania, F31.1 for hypomania, F31.9 for unspecified. But codes don't capture the experience. Codes don't provide treatment. Codes don't offer support. Codes are just categories, classifications, billing opportunities. On the unit, Sarah was medicated: lithium, valproate, antipsychotics, the standard treatments for bipolar disorder. The medications worked in a sense. They controlled the symptoms. They prevented the worst of the mania, the deepest of the depression. But they also flattened her. They took away not just the mania but the energy, the creativity, the sense of connection. They made her stable but also empty, and the medications had side effects: weight gain, tremors, cognitive fog, emotional blunting. Sarah had to choose: stability with side effects or risk of cycling without medication. It wasn't a real choice. She needed the medications, but she also needed support, therapy, understanding, a life worth living. The medications provided one. The system didn't provide the other. The mystery deepens. Why doesn't the system provide actual treatment? Why does it code but not heal? Why does it stabilize but not support? Part of the answer is financial. Treatment is expensive. Individual therapy costs money. Case management costs money. Support groups cost money. Housing assistance costs money. But coding is cheap. A diagnosis takes 15 minutes. A prescription takes 5. A discharge takes 10. The system can code thousands of patients in the time it takes to actually treat one. Part of the answer is structural. The system is designed for crisis management, not long-term care. Psychiatric units are for stabilization, not treatment. They're for managing acute symptoms, not addressing underlying conditions. They're for safety, not healing. The system assumes that once a patient is stable, they can be discharged, and outpatient providers will handle the rest. But outpatient providers are overwhelmed, underfunded, and often unavailable. Part of the answer is philosophical. The system treats mental illness as a medical problem: chemical imbalances, neurological disorders, biological conditions. Medications fix chemicals, but mental illness is also psychological, social, environmental. Trauma, poverty, isolation, lack of support, these aren't fixed by medications. They require therapy, community, resources, understanding. The system provides medications. It doesn't provide the rest. But she wasn't treated, she wasn't supported, she wasn't helped. She would cycle again, return to the unit, repeat the same script. The system would code her again, medicate her again, discharge her again, but it wouldn't treat her. His story was different but parallel. He didn't have real bipolar disorder. His mania was compensatory, a response to trauma. But the system coded him the same way. F3 1.9, applied quickly, documented minimally, billed frequently. He didn't need the medications they gave him. He needed trauma therapy, understanding, support. But the system didn't provide that either. It coded, it medicated, it discharged. It didn't treat. The mystery isn't who did it. The mystery is what did it. And the answer is the system itself. Not just the fraud, not just the misdiagnosis, but the entire structure. The way it codes but doesn't treat, the way it stabilizes but doesn't heal, the way it documents but doesn't understand. The clues were there from the beginning. The 4 intakes, the same script, the same codes, the same cycle. The injection at 3:15 p.m., sedation instead of understanding. 31.9 applied without assessment. F31.0 applied without treatment. The billing that rewards coding over care. The oversight that doesn't exist. The emergency funding that amplified the problem. The pattern that repeats, that cycles, that never resolves. The system codes, it documents, it bills, but it doesn't treat, it doesn't heal, it doesn't help. Sarah had real bipolar disorder, and she still didn't get help. He had compensatory mania, and he didn't get help either. The codes were different, but the outcome was the same. Stabilization without treatment, documentation without understanding, billing without healing. The mystery is solved, but the problem remains. The system codes but doesn't treat. It stabilizes but doesn't heal. It documents but doesn't understand. And until that changes, until the system provides actual treatment, real support, genuine help, the cycle will continue. Patients will be coded, medicated, discharged, and they will return. The script will repeat, the mystery will deepen, and the harm will continue. But understanding this is the first step. Recognizing the pattern is the beginning. Seeing how codes function, how the system works, how treatment is absent, this is how we begin to demand change. The codes have power, but understanding them is the first step toward reclaiming agency. The system codes, but we can demand that it also treats. Thank you for joining us on this journey through ShadowDirector, Dissecting the DSM. The mystery is solved. The system codes but doesn't treat. But by understanding this, by recognizing the pattern, by seeing how codes function in the real world, we can begin to demand better. The shadow remains, but it no longer has to dictate the terms of existence, and neither do the codes. Until we meet again, remember, the system codes, but it doesn't have to. We can demand that it also treats, that it also heals, that it also helps. The codes have power, but understanding them is the first step toward reclaiming agency.